Hey, Mike.
Hello.
How's it
How are
going?
you? Good, good.
Good. All right. You all set?
I'm all set.
Okay, cool. Also, I'm gonna do a quick intro to all the panelists. I just pulled off of what was on the site, just FYI. Um, I just have Mike leads Armanino's Cannabis Tax Group. It's kind of the first two paragraphs, if that works.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
And you don't have to read through all of that, really. I mean, you can just, just say, Mike leads Armanino's cannabis tax practice, national practice. That's
Okay. I mean, I got a couple paragraphs for everybody. Plus,
okay.
I think I'd like, hi Nick. Thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Want to just do the quick kind of intros with everybody so I can let y'all get to, I guess the main talking points from your angle about the issues with taxation and everything in the industry. So that way we can kind of maybe clean up anything I get wrong and then kind of jump to that, that 30,000 foot view of the cannabis industry and taxation and such.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. Yep. So open it up here in about 1 minute just for everybody else. We're kind of in a practice session right now, so still a little bit early. I think we generally will give everybody a few minutes to get going. So probably around 4:03 to 4:05, depending on attendance at that point, we'll actually like get going with the program and the agenda and everything.
Okay.
Cool. And Nick, did you have any questions before we get going at all?
You're on mute.
The format is?
So there's 5 panelists, 3 minutes intro and just like kind of top level issues that from your perspective or from your position on the cannabis industry and taxation. So that'll be 15 minutes between the 5 panelists, and then we'll get into the questions I sent over to everybody on Friday, and we'll just kind of discuss some of those as the conversation flows for the last 15 minutes. And then depending on timing, we'll do like around 5 minutes of attendance Q&A. And then again, depending on that time, it might go a couple minutes over that.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Any questions? All good?
All good. Easy breezy.
I feel like y'all might have done this a few times or two, so.
Yeah.
Hello, State Treasurer.
Hello.
How's it going?
Oh, another day. Another day. The sun is out though, so there we go.
Nice.
Indeed.
Makes life better.
Yeah. Did you have any questions before we get going? Clear with the format and everything for the panel?
I think I heard it. Introductions, and then we'll go to Q&A, and then open it up to your group.
Yep, that works. And then I took Nick Yating sent over your bio. I'll just kind of do the first couple paragraphs just for everybody, and then same thing with you, State Treasurer. I took your bio off your page, and I'll probably just do. I got your first paragraph and then your third one. So just kind of quick things that way. Again, you guys clarify anything that I mess up, and then move on to some of the issues affecting the cannabis industry and taxation.
Okay.
Excellent. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and start the webinar. And then again, we will probably get going around 4:03 just to wait for kind of any stragglers.
Very good.
All righty. We are live. right, thank you for everybody that is joining us early. We're going to go ahead and give this a few more minutes to get started. Wait for everybody else to jump on here. But thank you all again for joining us. Hey, good afternoon, Wesley.
Good afternoon. Very nice to be here.
All right, good to see you. Just waiting a couple more minutes here.
So Nick, I want to apologize in advance. I had one of the bullets in the slide I'm going to have to skip over just out of time that said, don't shoot the messenger. And then I had CDTFA because one, I got a little of amusement about how misguided it was. But the unfortunate thing was instead of channeling that rage into things that maybe we could have done, it was completely wasted on the group of people who were simply following the law and enforcing it and so forth. But Dallin cut my time, and so I had to take that one out.
Well,
Oh, I didn't know it was at Nick's expense.
thanks, Dallin.
My apologies.
So there may be lots of kid noise. I've got kids getting ready for piano lessons and things.
That's excellent.
And I've taken refuge in my wife's office, and I can't figure out the virtual backgrounds on Zoom. So
Well, you look well read.
Yeah.
That's for
Yeah.
sure.
there are a lot of fashion books, which are not, if you knew me, you would know are not mine.
CDTFA director says, I am not a cat, and it goes viral.
That was funny.
It was phenomenal, right? I mean, it came at the right moment that nothing was coming through, like on my news feed. And then all of a sudden it seemed like everybody I'd ever met in my life was sending that to me. And I just,
I know.
That's good. All right. Hi, everybody that is joining us. We're going to do just another minute or two before we get going. It's about 4:01, probably start around 4:03, just to wait for everybody to join in case anybody has technical difficulties.
and then you'll allow me to share the screen or you'll do it either way. That's great.
You all should be able to.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Just another minute here. Hey, Chris, you're on mute.
Thank you, Dallin. Sorry about that. I just wanted to say good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining. Fiona, congratulations. It's been a while since we've spoken. I think probably a year and a half or 2 years, and the last time I saw you, you had not become treasurer yet, so congratulations on becoming treasurer.
Oh, thank you, Chris. Look at that beard.
Yes, I think the camera is accentuating it. You know who had a really impressive beard? Wes, to be fair, had something that was much greater. Mine's actually not that long, but I certainly look Santa Claus-ish in this picture, don't I?
Yours
Yes.
looks like, I do want to ask you, Fiona, have you set up, are you at the Capitol, or have you set up an office at your home that looks so?
I am in Sacramento, but this is I'm in an office.
Oh, I
But then-
love that.
I do have this virtual background in my other office, but I'm sitting in another office today because I'm just more comfortable here. So there you
I
go.
did not know that that was a virtual background. That was awesome.
It
Yeah.
doesn't look like it. And Assembly Member Bonta, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Looks like you've got a great virtual background as well.
That one's real. I have it in virtual or real. This is the real one. Good to see everybody. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Rob.
Hey.
All right. Well, it's 4:03 right now, so I think we can get started. First off, just say thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you for our exceptional panel for joining us today. We're really excited about this conversation. First thing, just want to let everyone know this is our first Cannabis Chamber of Commerce Thought Leaders event in the new year. Last one was about middle of last year. We kind of gave it a pause with the elections and everything, and then the new year. And so we're back, and again, we have an exceptional panel. We're really looking forward to this discussion. Start off, my name is Dallin Young with Blue Water Government Affairs. We work on cannabis policy in the San Diego County area. And I'm also chair of the Legislative and Advocacy Committee, which is helping put this event on. Next, so I want to go ahead and just introduce our chairman, Chris Boudreau, who is chair of all of the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, who will just give a quick word and a quick intro to everybody. And then we'll move on to just some administrative items, say thank you to our sponsor, and then get to the panel here. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Chris Boudreau for a quick introduction.
Okay, thank you, Dallin. Thank you to our amazing panelists. Mr. Grawl, thank you for joining. Mr. Maduros, I actually haven't seen you in a couple of years. I don't know if you remember me, but thank you for joining. Wes, it's always a pleasure. Fiona, always great to see you. And Member Rob Bonta, thank you so much for joining. Thank you everybody out there for joining us today for the event. Our organization has been growing in a great way in the quiet times of 2020. We are getting ready to open our 5th chapter in the Bay Area, and we'll have functional regional chapters in every portion of the state, every major metro market, and hope you will take a look at events that we'll be having this summer and look to join us at one of our events. Right now we're doing some great virtual events, both for these Thought Leaders series that Dallin and some of our team members are leading, and then we have speed networking events that we've been having about every 6 to 8 weeks as well. Last one we brought in Rick Gillis, who is the head of Tinley, and who prior to that was the president of Young's, the 2nd largest alcohol distributor in the world. We bring great speakers in and hope you can join us for these virtual events. And in the summer, when we can get back to enjoying each other's company in person, we hope you will join us for a local event then as well. Thank you, Dallin. Please go ahead.
Great. Thank you so much, Chris. Appreciate it. All right, so just a couple quick admin things before we get going. This event is videotaped, just so everybody knows. No weird faces or anything like that. It will be online. Next, we do have a Q&A section at the end of the panel for our attendance members and participants. So if you do have any questions as we move through the panel, please type them in the question and answer portion below, and we're going to try and get to as many of them as possible. So please put those in there. Also, we do have a Slack channel for all of our thought leaders here. I'll go ahead and post that in the chat once we get the panel going and everything. We hope that everybody will join us there and participate and share any of your wonderful thoughts in that thought leaders Slack channel there. All right, so next we're going to go ahead and say thank you to our sponsor, Armanino. Mike Gorell, who is also one of our panelists, will be speaking to that. So I'll go ahead and turn it over and say thank you, Mike, for your sponsorship today, and move over to you for a couple words.
Thank you, Dale. Armanino is a proud sponsor of this event, and we're a full-service accounting firm that provides everything from bookkeeping services to tax services, including state, federal, local taxes, cultivation taxes, all the local taxes in California and other states as well. And we also provide audit services, certified financial statements, and we have a really amazing IT consulting group that really takes all those different platforms and systems and can integrate them into a single platform so you can get real-time data analytics to run your business. So again, we're very happy and proud to be a sponsor of this event and look forward to this conference.
Great, and thank you so much again, Mike. Really appreciate your sponsorship today. All right, so moving on to the panel, and just one other thing I missed in the admin section is these thought leader events, we do try to keep them very action-packed and tight time-wise. So we try to fit as much as we can to an hour. We know we're in the middle of the week and everything, so we want to be able to just provide some information and then let everybody get on with their day. So we'll be done by 5 o'clock. But for the panelists, we're going to have a tight 30 to 35 minute conversation. The way the panel is going to work is each of the panelists I introduce here is going to have about 3 minutes to just a quick intro. And then we have a lot of various angles around taxation in the cannabis space. So we're going to let them kind of attack that from their angle, what they think some of the problems are, maybe a solution or two from their position that they can address that. And then that'll be about 15 minutes. The latter 15 minutes will be some general panel questions that will be addressed to everybody, and we're looking for a good conversation between everybody there. And then the last 5 to 10 minutes, depending on time, will be audience question and answers. So with that, we're going to go ahead and start with the introductions with our State Treasurer, Fiona Ma. Fiona Ma is California's 34th state treasurer. She was elected on November 6, 2018, with more votes than any other candidate for state treasurer in the state's history, which is fantastic. She is the first woman of color and the first woman certified public accountant elected to the position. California is the 5th largest economy, and Treasurer Ma is the state's primary banker. Her office processes more than $2 trillion in payments within a typical year and provides transparency and oversight for an investment portfolio of more than $90 billion. Approximately $20 billion of which are local government funds. She is also responsible for $35 billion in outstanding general obligations and lease revenue bonds of the state. Without further ado, State Treasurer Ma, thank you so much for joining us today. I'll go ahead and pass it off to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dylan. Great to see Chris again and everybody else, Director Maduros, my good friend Rob Bonta. I started down this cannabis path when I was on the State Board of Equalization. I got elected in 2014, and one of the things I figured out was that we were supposed to collect taxes from the dispensaries, yet nobody knew how much we collected because the Schedule 1 nature of the industry. Number 2, there's no NA6 code when you open up your sales tax permit. And just a whole host of other issues, especially the lack of banking access. And so I started down my Cannabis 101 curriculum, and I'm probably got like a PhD by now, but I'm still working on banking the cannabis industry, which is still the #1 priority, because as an accountant and as Nick knows, we cannot follow cash. We really need some sort of paper trail, a bank statement or a credit card statement. And without that, it's really hard. But it's also hard for the industry in terms of, safety measures. And so I'm glad that we now have a new president with a new Congress that is focused on banking the industry, equitable opportunities, trying to open up the industry to make sure everybody can benefit and not just those who have a lot of money. So I testified in Congress 2 years ago now on the Safe Banking Act, Congressman Perlmutter's bill, and he has managed to raise the profile of his bill. He got it into the last stimulus package. Speaker Pelosi and others supported it. So I see that we are moving in the right direction. And we're going to talk, I know, about taxes and how high taxes are and collection. But even during this pandemic, the fact that cannabis is an essential business, I think, has been really great for the industry, right? Regardless of how hard it is to get permits, either at the state level, at the local level, how hard it is to access capital, how high the taxes are. But the fact that they're open as an essential business, I think, has really helped move this industry along. So I look forward to the conversation today.
All right, great. Thank you so much, State Treasurer Fiona. Next, we have Assemblymember Rob Bonta. Assemblymember Rob Bonta was elected to the California State Assembly's 18th District in 2012, where he represented the cities of Oakland, Alameda, and San Leandro. He became the first Filipino-American state legislature in California's then 160-plus-year history. In the State Assembly, Bonta currently serves as the Assistant Majority Leader. He serves on the Appropriations, Communications and Conveyance, Governmental Organizations, and Health Committees. He has authored significant legislation that promotes and defends our California values of justice, inclusion, equity, and opportunity. Thank you so much for joining us today, Assemblymember Rob Bonta. Go ahead and pass it off to you in case I butchered anything there.
Thank you, Dallin. Honored to be here with everybody, particularly State Treasurer Ma. Thank you for your leadership and your friendship. And my classmate, Director Maduros, is here. Maybe he'll tell some stories about our college years together in his comments. But it's an incredible panel. Just honored to be with you all. Looking forward to the discussion. You know, back in 2015, I had the honor of being one of the authors for the MCRSA, which I thought was a really important contribution to the legal and regulatory framework for cannabis in the state of California. Provided regulations and clarity that help protect our environment and make sure that product was healthy and high quality for access for consumers, patients. Helped address the illicit market, and part of the effort was to provide some comfort to the legislators who at the time were not very comfortable with the issue of cannabis. I think it's come a long way. We're sort of on a continuum of the stigma of cannabis falling away, but it still hasn't completely fallen away. And it certainly was very strong back then, the stigma. So heavy regulation was an important part of the effort. And then at that time, there was going to be no deal unless there was a strong component of local control, which we know now has had some undesired outcomes. So since that time, the next year we had Prop 16 pass. Prop 64 in 2016, and so in just sort of 1 year, 365 days, a lot changed in California for the good, but we didn't get it all right. And so my goal and my role, I believe, has been to be part of this ongoing effort to perfect and improve our regulatory framework, address the unintended consequences, fix the challenges that get in the way of the underlying sort of social compact of the MCRSA and Prop 64, which is that if a cannabis business that was once operating in the illicit marketplace, it comes out of the shadows into the light, embraces the rules, pays taxes, follows all the regulations, they can be a successful business like any other California business, creating good jobs, paying taxes, being successful. And we still have huge barriers to that. The taxes are too high. The regulations are too many and unnecessary at times. There can be greater simplification. There can be lower barriers to entry. We have a choke point at our local in our local areas where not enough licenses and approvals are being provided. So there's a lot more still to do. And I'm in this for the long haul, working with all of you, stakeholders, partners. I learn from you every time I have the opportunity to have these dialogues. Look forward to working with you to continue to improve our cannabis legal and regulatory regimes in the state of California. Again, thanks for having me.
Great, thank you so much, Assembly Member. Next, we'll move on to Director Nick Maduros. Nick Maduros serves as the first director of the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration. Appointed by Governor Brown and reappointed by Governor Newsom, he oversees the state collection of sales and use taxes, as well as a range of other public revenue programs. CDTFA administers over 30 tax and fee programs and is responsible for collecting more than $70 billion in public revenue annually. Thank you so much for joining us again, Director. I'll go ahead and pass it off to you.
Thanks so much. And it's great to be here with all of you and with the Treasurer and with Assemblymember Bonta, whose wife also is a classmate of mine and was one of my first friends at college. So although Rob is aging a lot better than I am, especially today with my COVID hair. So it's things aren't good. Anyway, on cannabis, I just want to give a brief update. I have a little bit of a different perspective, I think, than the Assembly Member and the Treasurer. Our job at CDTFA is basically to administer the taxes, however the policymakers of the state of California determine they ought to be structured, and we're happy to do that. Our main interest is coming up with a tax program that's workable and equitable for the people of California. Looking at cannabis tax revenue, we administer 3 of the tax programs that impact the cannabis industry: the excise tax, the cultivation tax, and the sales and use tax. Those numbers have been climbing, although for fourth quarter 2020, we're down a bit, but there is a 3-month extension available to smaller taxpayers. So we would expect those numbers to climb over the coming weeks. But we have seen a growth over the past few years in cannabis tax revenue. Part of that in recent years is due to the resetting of the wholesale markup rate from 60% to 80% based on track and trace data. So that is, I think, the explanation for some of that. We do see and continue to see significant non-compliance in the cannabis space. A lot of illegal operators at the retail level and the distribution level, particularly in Southern California. We've actually set up a unit based in Southern California to focus on this issue from a sales and use tax perspective. Just to give you all a sense of what our enforcement over the past couple of years, we've conducted about more than 400 cannabis inspections. We've made about 113 seizures, including taking in $600,000 in cash. We've just recently got our first auditors on the excise and cultivation taxes, but we have been busy doing audits on the sales tax front. We've completed 83 cannabis audits and have 85 other cannabis related sales tax audits going on. We've so far assessed more than $50 million in liability in those 83 audits. Our focus thus far has been on businesses in the illegal market. We are working, we hear every day from legal cannabis operators whose businesses are being severely impacted by the presence of so many illicit operators. And so we have focused on that. We obviously, if we see serious non-compliance with legal operators, we also will look into those instances. Track and trace data is, one of the things that we use, although it's obviously not effective for those people that are operating entirely outside of the legal market. I look forward to having this discussion today, and we're always looking for ways that we can be more effective in our administration of California's tax laws. And again, our only focus is making sure that we come up with something that's workable, enforceable, and equitable.
Great, thank you so much. If we have time, I'd love to hear some stories between you and the assembly member in your college days, but we'll see if we have time. All right, next we're gonna go to Mike Rall. Mike leads Armanino's Cannabis Tax Group, tax professional since 1989. He has significant experience in federal, state, and local tax from both an accounting and legal perspective. He spent time with multiple Big Four firms, including serving in KPMG's Washington National Tax Office, and has worked with cannabis companies both large and small in California, Nevada, Oregon, Washington, and Colorado. Thank you so much for joining us, Mike. Go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dylan. What I'm seeing from a tax perspective is a lot of M&A activity. And this really started last year before COVID. And then when COVID hit in March and April, that kind of, put everything on pause until we got into the later part of the third quarter and certainly in the fourth quarter. And what's driving a lot of this is that, COVID became a double-edged sword for cannabis companies where, some thrived and were able to pivot their business model to do, pickup of product from their dispensaries, and others, though, were not able to have a very good supply chain and suffered. And so now some of the ones that are surviving are starting to, pick up either brands that they've always wanted that they're now, available for them to buy, or they're looking to expand their operations. And some of those expansions are within California, and many of them are outside of California. And, unfortunately, we do have a very rigorous, tax system here. And that, makes it much more difficult to operate a cannabis company and be in compliance from a tax perspective than maybe some of the other states. So hopefully, that's going to change here, and things will get a little bit easier and better for cannabis companies. And I'm hopeful that trend will continue. Another thing that we're seeing is a lot of, requests for audits and having certified financial statements, because many of these companies, their exit strategy is to get bought out by a larger company, maybe even a SPAC. They're very interested in acquiring cannabis companies. And in order to get that valuation that they're looking for, they need to have good records. And unfortunately, some of these companies they've been just so focused on, running their business and expanding it. They haven't spent the time they need to get their books in order to get an audit, so that they can get that valuation that they're looking for. No discussion about tax would be, really complete unless we talked about the blue wave and, the expectations that are out there. Certainly, having President Biden in the White House helps, along with the 2 Democratic senators. But still, I was a little disappointed to hear earlier this week about a U.S. Supreme Court case that went up to the U.S. Supreme Court, a Colorado case, and the Justice Department, intervened and supported the IRS's position on 280E, which, is really a very difficult code section to not only interpret, but also for cannabis companies to have that burden added on top of other tax burdens on their businesses in order to really be a profitable company. So I'm hoping that things will improve there, and certainly, we expect that social equity issues and expungement of records, of criminal records, that will continue. Certainly on a state-by-state basis, and maybe even nationally as well. But from a tax perspective, that's really the main topics and issues that are going on right now.
Okay, thank you so much, Mike. All right, last and certainly not least, we have Wesley Hein. Wesley has founded numerous venture-backed organizations in high-growth industries. Past experience includes co-founder presidents of multiple different, I'll just say Enigma Records, EVP Hollywood Records, co-founder of Cinebase Software, and co-founder of Enigma Digital, all of which were acquired or merged with larger companies. Now Wes oversees the global expansion of Mammoth Distribution, several brands, as well as managing the legal, government affairs, and strategic relationship departments. Mammoth is one of the largest commercial cannabis companies in California, and he's also on the board of directors of the Cannabis Distributors Association and on the steering committee of the Legal Cannabis Consumer Safety. So thank you so much, Wesley. Good to see you again. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you. And you should be able to share your screen if you want to give that a try here.
First off, I'll guess that I'm going last because I did not go to college with the other panelists. I understand that.
Yep.
And there's one thing that people in the cannabis industry dislike more than taxes. It is, excuse me, let me see if I get this here. It is PowerPoint, and I'm going to bring you both. So please let me know if you can see
Good.
the presentation. Great. All right, so we talk about how cannabis taxes are high. I'm going to argue they're much higher than you can imagine, that it's not in the public's interest, and that we're not helpless. And I'm going to try to jam that into 3 minutes. Okay, the reason that cannabis taxes are higher than we know and you can imagine is because they're very opaque. That is, there's lots of layers. We talk a lot about the cultivation tax, the excise tax. Excise tax, kind of easy. It's 15% if you ignore the calculation on a markup. But the real devil is in all the local taxes. Each step of the way in the supply chain, there is a local tax, and these are compounded. So you have taxes on taxes. And to give you an idea of where these end up, we'll talk about the local gross proceeds taxes. The LAO estimates that local taxes account for 14%. That is, they're 14%. That might not seem high, but my calculations on non-cannabis local taxes in total is 0.33%. That's not 3.3%, that's not 33%, that's 0.33. So it's a 42 times differential. To put that in dollars and cents, a retailer of non-cannabis goods in Los Angeles pays $1.27 per $1,000 of gross sales. A cannabis retailer selling that same $1,000 of goods pays $100. That's 79 times. So when that flows down and we add those things, in fact, let's put it another way. We have two retailers next door to each other, both successful, both doing $10 million a year, both probably about to get their sales tax audited. But one will be accounting to the city for $1 million. That's the dispensary. That liquor store next door with the same sales, their total city taxes for the year, $12,700. So you can see that these cannabis taxes are significant. And for a cannabis consumer, in taxes in total, they pay 48 times what an adult use beer drinker, yes, that's what I like to call them, adult use beer drinkers or an adult use wine drinker, the differential is 114 times. So I will skip most of these. I think we know that cannabis taxes, there's a lot of problems with them, but the thing I really want to drive in is that cannabis is an elastic good. And if we remember from economics, when taxes drive cost up or cost go up, that increases demand for substitutes. What is a close substitute for illicit cannabis? For legal cannabis? Of course, it's illicit cannabis, untested, unsafe, and completely untaxed. Dank vapes, we all remember that from just a couple of years ago. The other thing that I think is going to get increasing attention, as it should, is all this good work that is going in and attention into social equity and getting applicants licensings. I think a lot of that is going to be undone by these gross proceed taxes, because they're not income taxes. They are owed and paid whether or not somebody is making money. And so other than CEQA, I think it's probably the greatest threat that faces these operators. And then lastly, we're not helpless. What can we do? I think the most important thing, and some of you have heard me say this, is reframe the conversation away from comparing to the Prop 215 rates. A lot of people were paying, a lot of municipalities had rates of 10%. So when they move it down to 8%, 6%, we're celebrating, but in those old days of 10%, that was the only tax. There was no cultivation tax, no excise tax, no compliance costs, testing costs, application fees, license fees, and so forth. So it's really apples and oranges. So frame the conversation in terms of comparisons that people can understand. You know, ask when they're discussing taxes, why a dispensary should pay 79 times the local tax. Ask why a cannabis patient should pay 97 times the state excise tax, and then in addition, another 43%. Other things that we can do besides reframing the conversation would be combine the two excises taxes, the cultivation tax and the excise tax. This makes the calculation easier, the collection easier, and auditing easier. Same thing about moving it to, the same arguments are for moving to point of sales. And then finally, as an industry, I'm hoping we can come together and stop shooting ourselves in our foot. And what I mean by that is we all want federal legalization. We need it to happen. But I'm so disappointed that the one that we're pushing has a 5% excise tax. Think about what a 5% tax costs on something that's going to get added to all of these other things. Does anybody know what the federal excise tax is on a bottle of beer? A nickel. I would say let's propose the same federal excise tax, the same tax rate as alcohol. And then finally, and we're all blessed to be in this incredible state that has an incredible history for cannabis cultivation. It also has a 170-year history of supporting agricultural industry on its exports. Legalization will come at a federal level, and so will, at some point or another, interstate. And so we have this incredible opportunity to support this homegrown industry. Everybody in the country is going to want California cannabis. Let's not kill it with excessive taxation. And then I have a pretty picture for those people that have been tuning out in the numbers. Way down here, the little black, that's taxation on non-cannabis goods and then the comparable taxation for cannabis. Thank you.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Wes. We're gonna last because kind of figured you might go over, but all good. It was very informative, so we really appreciate it there. Okay, so now just a couple questions just to the panel here. I'd love to hear just robust dialogue. I kind of want to start with you, Assembly Member. You've sponsored quite a few bills to take care of or give some relief to cannabis industries, potentially lowering the tax and all that. Wanted to see, I guess, from your angle, what has been some of the roadblocks there. Maybe what can we do as an industry to help out there, and then kind of buttress that up with another question of, do you think that, and kind of everybody as well, do you think that it might be more worthwhile to spend our time trying to lower our local taxes, or do we think we might get some relief at the state?
Great question. Let me answer the second question first and say that I think we should walk and chew gum at the same time, meaning do both. I don't think we have to choose. I think we should try on the multiple fronts and see what we can shake loose, but learn from the past and try to work with some of the challenges, either get around them or negotiate them away or get through them somehow. But I had the tax reduction bill for 3 years, 2018, 2019, 2020, reduced the excise tax from 15% to 11%, and also suspended the cultivation tax. Sorry, that's my dog Legolas getting involved in the conversation here. He's passionate about tax reduction in the cannabis space, apparently. But a lot of folks don't think that reducing taxes will increase revenue, and don't understand the sort of unique aspect of having a huge illicit market where folks are not paying any taxes, who can migrate into a legalized marketplace if the barriers are lowered and it's a more welcoming environment for them. And so we had the reduction for 3 years in the bill 3 times. And each time, there's sort of this visceral reaction from Democrats that say, why are we lowering corporate taxes? And then there's also a debate around whether it will increase or decrease revenue. And there's folks who are on the receiving end of that revenue who care deeply about the revenue either growing or at least not shrinking. And so those are some of the challenges. And I've introduced another bill this year that is a spot bill for now that will seek to sort of negotiate some of these components. I was interested to see the simplification of combining the 2 taxes. That's interesting. I think there could be maybe an approach not yet explored or put on the table that could be the final landing spot. But we continue to have concerns around the recipients of the revenue. We continue to have doubt about whether lowering the taxes can actually, by growing the tax base, can increase total amount of revenue, even though the rate is lower. And so I think that education process, that continuing to share, I think the personal stories are always super impactful, kind of walking through what it means to lower the taxes and the sort of inequity and unfairness of a fully compliant cannabis business operating in competition with an operator in the illicit marketplace, and how they're undercut and how it's unfair. Sort of Democrats with super majorities and sort of trying to appeal to the guiding principles of the Democrats, I think is going to be important. But I think we also need to address the issue of more, opening it up, so to speak, with more licenses at the local level. And Senator Skinner has a bill this year which addresses an issue that's really important, which is that some local leaders just don't have the bandwidth or the knowledge of what's the best way to go about this, or how to have that kind of, that backbone, that regulatory infrastructure. So allowing the state to kind of take the lead on that while kind of do that work for them is an interesting approach. We'll see how far it goes, but helping folks overcome that initial reaction to just say, this is too complicated. I have too many people that are going to be upset about more cannabis, in the neighborhood. I'm just going to say, no, that's easier. But providing tools and support that allow the opening, I think, is going to be a really interesting contribution to the policy space. So I think we should do both. And I think there's ways to address the concerns that have been raised over the last couple of years and overcome them. I remain hopeful on that.
Okay. Yeah, please. Yeah. Anybody other comments on that?
Actually,
Well,
I've got,
oh, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I had a comment for Assemblyman. The bill that you were just talking about where the state would help local governments administer the taxes and everything. How has that been received? Has that been seen as a good thing that, hey, the state will help local governments with this matter? Or has it been seen as, the state trying to take over and maybe not, addressing all of the local government's issues?
I think probably too early to tell. Like the bill is not even, the substance is not in print yet. So I don't think there's been a lot of sort of traction with the locals yet to even have an opinion on it. But I think it's interesting. It's not like we had kind of a bigger stick approach in the past that Assemblymember Ting had that was a little more forceful in its approach, and more the stick than the carrot. I think that was not taken necessarily well by some of the locals, but it was maybe seen as by them received as too aggressive. I don't think this is seen as particularly aggressive. It's saying, we know you have some bandwidth limits. Let us provide that for you if you want to open up. And so you don't have to worry about that. We'll take on that responsibility. We'll take on that duty. We'll do that work. So, and then, maybe something gets negotiated. Maybe there's lines where the locals say, we're happy with you doing X, but not Y. So, don't overstep your authority here. But I think there could be a landing place in there. And I think it's a really interesting approach.
So I just wanted to add that when Prop 64 was being drafted on the ballot, I did talk to the initiative writers and I said, please put something in about banking access. The initiative process in California is a very liberal process. Anyone who has money, who can get the signatures, can put anything on the ballot. And for me, putting something in about banking access was key to me supporting Prop 64 publicly. And they didn't do that. And I did not take a public stand on Prop 64. However, yesterday, the state house, the lower house in South Dakota, voted almost unanimously, 64-4, to send HB 1203 to the Senate. And that bill would allow South Dakota chartered banks to conduct transactions with businesses that have state licenses for cannabis and industrial hemp. That's what we need here in the state of California. Having the legislature pass an initiative saying, you know what? We passed it, both medical and recreational here in the state of California. It is legal. We're encouraging everyone to sign up and, do the right thing, and having access to banking and allowing the banks, giving the banks some sort of confidence that they are not going to be prosecuted, that we're not going to go after them, that, we want them to be part of the solution, is going to be very, very helpful. Plus, it'll probably decrease the high fees that some of the banks are charging that are in that space already. There's about a dozen banks in California that are legally, taking cannabis clients, but those lucky few are paying very, very high fees for that, the luxury of having a bank account.
Honestly, I think we're still in the stage where education's necessary. There's some people who are using taxes because they lost at the ballot box, so they're using taxes just as another form of prohibition. And so we're never going to be able to win those people over. We just need to educate all of the people who voted for adult use and are in favor of medicinal cannabis about the levels of taxation. I don't know if they still do it, but it used to be if you're driving on the freeway and a truck was in front of you, it would say, this truck pays over $1.15 in federal highway taxes or whatever. And it was their way of saying, don't blame us for expensive shipping fees. I mean, I would volunteer myself to work with all the POS systems, and so it could calculate not just whatever the sort of tax that's required by, Prop or Mark Hirsh said to put on there, but do an estimate of the entire bits of taxes that were on there and have another little thing. By the way, if you were buying something that was other than cannabis, you would be paying this. And something, I just think that we have to educate people to get them there. And secondly is not let people use this as a form of prohibition. I mean, there was a time where cities and counties did not want to give up the revenue they were getting from property taxes in the 70s, and there was a revolt, and that's Prop 213. And so I do think if we continue to go against the will of the people and charge these rates, there will be a time that the voters will take it into their own hands.
I would just say, again, I'm fine with whatever the tax rates are. But given the levels of non-compliance we're seeing out there in the marketplace, and given what Wes has talked about in terms of the various taxes out there, I think there needs to be some discussion as part of this. There needs to be increased enforcement at some of the local levels. There's only so much we can do as the taxing agency. No matter how low you cut taxes, given all the other regulations, there's going to continue to be a significant illicit market unless there is some real effort to enforce.
Okay.
Are we allowed? Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, you have another comment there? Okay, I was going to change subjects. I did want to just circle back on Senator Skinner's Senate Bill, I think 398, which was the one I think you were referring to earlier. Now, if that moves forward, I think that could be kind of like a good solution to some of the issues that we're having. But if that moved forward, do you think that there could be some other efforts to maybe, if we have additional licenses in more jurisdictions throughout the state, could we spread the tax burden of, I guess, the taxes that are needed in the state to kind of make up for I guess, COVID issues? Could those tax burdens be spread to all those different jurisdictions, all those other different businesses? And so that, with the caveat of, would there or might there be any effort at the state level to cap the amount of taxation that local jurisdictions could add to their cannabis businesses?
That's definitely been a point of discussion. A cap on what locals can do, or a cumulative cap. I think that's still worthy of consideration. If we open up more of the choke point at the local level, we can get. I think some of the estimates are that we get $1 billion more in revenue, and so that's a total game changer. And so we've and then I saw a question in the chat around. There's all these locals that are struggling to identify a regulatory structure. It's complicated. They often just fall on their face. We talked about having a sort of a uniform template with imprimatur and the stamp of approval of the state that kind of says this is something that kind of you can walk through as a locality and say, if you want X, then you have this language. If you don't want X, then you go to the next step and kind of pick the provisions that you want to govern your city. And I think more tools like that are needed. I think there are the prohibitionists who use taxes, as Wes was saying, to win the proposition that they lost. But there are some who just don't know what to do. And if they had the guidance, support, resources, and maybe the input from the state, then I think you'd see more opening up at the local level.
Any other comments on that?
Okay. I mean, I'll also say that there's one state tax, right? And so it is what it is. If you want to do business in California, you have to pay it. But there is more competitive local taxation rates where if you don't want to stay in Oakland and you don't want to pay their tax rate, you can come to Alameda, and Kiva did that. And so you can, if you have the ability to move. The local tax rate could be, one of the drivers of that, and so there is some downward pressure on the local taxes because of that competition, but certainly not enough. And the cap is still something that should be considered.
Yeah, I'd love to just sort of affirm that as well. It's exactly right. I mean, honestly, it's tough for a cultivator to pull up and move. And it's in retailers, we all know location by location by location. And so unfortunately losing the the lawsuit or the case that allowed delivery to go in would have been something to help. But if, you know, you talk about Santa Rosa and Lompoc, there are cities that are coming out, at least on the distribution level, and they're taxing them just like any other business, the exact same. And you're absolutely right. I think that's why they both have very vibrant markets. They have very good employment, and I think they're doing well. And those are things that should be encouraged by the industry.
All right, yeah, so we're coming up on time for the panel here. So I guess we've only got a couple more minutes. I think it's time for about one more question. I'm going to go to the chat here. Let me see. Let me see. We'll go ahead and do. This is from Jim Fitzpatrick. It is widely known that the largest cannabis brands are actively operating in a licensed market, fighting unfair advantage over those who choose to endure the expense and compliance and resist the illicit market temptations. Why aren't taxes being used to enforce known offenders? And I think, Nick, you did touch on that a little bit, right?
Yeah, and if I'd welcome people to call our tip line and let us know, but we are actively seeking out tax liabilities wherever we can find them. It's, you know, there are a number of state agencies involved in this. We have sort of the smallest number of people, but I think have had a relatively outsized impact. But there's way more that needs to be done on the enforcement side. And we are seeing people operating in both the legal and illicit market, and it shouldn't be happening.
Okay, and actually another question that came up in the chat too is, I mean, I think it kind of plays off that a little bit, is if we are just going to be going toward enforcement only strategies, isn't that kind of just a new war on drugs? So I guess kind of open question to everybody, but
I will say among the biggest things driving our actions at the department are the entreaties of people in the industry. So I don't view it as a war on drugs. We're hearing from people who are trying to play by the rules that they, you know, are being undercut. And it's just like any other industry. If you have people with toxic waste paying the money to dispose of it properly, and you have other people taking it out to the levee and dumping the drums, I mean, you know, it's the state's rule, it's the state's obligation to make sure that everybody's playing by the same set of rules and protecting the public.
Well, and there also needs to be consequences to, you know, when you are caught running an illegal operation, because, you know, from the most part, you know, it's a slap on the wrist, and then 2 weeks later they open up another dispensary down the street, and it's just cost of doing business.
That's right.
okay, all right. Well, we're just on time right now, so I guess we'll just go back through and just any final words from a panelist. State Treasurer Fiona Ma, I'll go ahead and start with you. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. Just any final words?
Well, I just saw a question come in the chat about the Safe Banking Act. I think it is definitely a priority. You know, Senator Kamala Harris, when she was running for Senate, she also supported, I can't remember what the name of that act was, but I think it's top of mind for many people. I know the president, that wasn't his top priority, but I think he will be convinced that this is here to stay, and we are competing against other countries. Right now, I'm hearing that other countries want to import or export to the US, and it shouldn't be. It should be the US. We are the leaders. We should be supporting and growing and making sure that, you know, our folks here, especially here in California, where I think we do it the best, are not shut out of all of the opportunities that other countries are now taking advantage of, either on the stock market or, you know, their banking, you know, and everything else. So California, I know a lot of times, you know, we seek to be the leaders. We're the 5th largest economy, but I think some of the things we're doing here in California is not showing leadership. And, you know, I think all of you on this call understand that. We all need to get together, fight collectively, you know, lobby and advocate collectively. And I think that's part of some of the challenges that Assemblymember Bonta has been facing in the legislature is a lot of people like don't know. They're like, why should we do it? It's so new. We should be collecting more taxes, but all of you in the industry, we need your voices, you know, the real voices to advocate and to call your legislators at the local level, at the state level, at the federal level, to let them know that it's not working and we need to make changes and we need to just come together and speak with one voice. So that's my closing comments.
Okay, great. Thank you. Assembly member, any last words?
Yeah, thank you again for the opportunity to join you. I'm feeling really hopeful and optimistic about this particular moment at the federal level and the state level. I think there's opportunity for fixing some of the challenges that we faced, making progress at the federal level when that seemed impossible before, and having the opportunity for growth of the marketplace in a way that's healthy and safe and protects our environment and keeps consumers and patients safe. So, I think we should try to get some progress with that trifecta we have at the federal level. Something, a descheduling or a lower scheduling, or a little more state autonomy, or the opportunity for some state compacts, or expungements for some of the crimes on records. Just keep pushing and make it count during this 2 years when we have the majorities, and deliver something. Like you can't keep not having anything happen. Maybe it's banking, just looking at it as a straight up public safety issue. And at the state level, continue to make progress. Every year is better than the one before. Sometimes it's not as fast as we want, but it's with the education, the relationships, the tours. We're not doing those as much right now because of COVID, but when people see these businesses, the first thing they say is, this is not what I expected. And so they have some stigma and some image, in their mind that is, they're completely divorced of when they walk into one of these professionally run businesses by great business folks. And so, and I do think there was a comment made that the illicit marketplace and the choke hold at the retail level and taxes are all interrelated. They are all interrelated, and we need to continue to hold them together as the challenge to getting the regulated marketplace in a position that it needs to be. But I think with the partnerships, the discussion, the dialogue, the education, I think we can get there.
Okay, great. Thank you. Director Nick Maduros, anything from you?
Just thank you again for having me, and thank you all for focusing on these issues and for your continuing work, particularly on the part of the Treasurer and Assemblymember Bonta, to try to come up with a system that's as workable as possible, because we realize that the current system does have some very significant inherent challenges.
Okay, thank you again for joining us. Mike Rawl.
Well, I think this is just a really exciting time in the cannabis industry. I mean, in California, and I think nationally as well, cannabis is the fastest growing industry group around. And what's great about it is I think that, you don't have to be in a large metropolitan city to have a fairly large cannabis company. And so, these rural communities and all are going to benefit so much from this industry group and all the ancillary businesses that support this industry group. It's all interconnected, and I think it's just an exciting time to be in this industry.
Yes, indeed it is. All right, Wesley.
Well, and I'm glad somebody put that in the chat, because I do absolutely agree on licensing. I mean, for those of us who have watched, this artificial cap on licensing is equally flummoxing as the taxation. And if we've watched beer over the last couple of decades, it's basically anybody that wants to put out a beer can put out a beer, and consumers and operators and everybody has gained by that. And it's very frustrating that somebody who has a desire to create a cannabis product or create a retail or delivery service or any number of different things like that may never get the chance because of this artificial cap. And I think that we absolutely have to continue to work on that. But that does not also excuse people, using my beer example. Somebody can't slap Heineken on something that they made in their bathtub and filled with vitamin E acetate and sell off to people. There are rules against those kinds of things. And then I just want to stress again, the group of this people on, we're going to see this opportunity for export. We have a chance because Prop 64 and MRCURSA, I don't think we were thinking that. I wasn't in the room with you. And so we have this chance to go, if cannabis is grown in Humboldt and then is going off to Maine legally, when that happens, let's not tax it like we've been doing. And I think we have this chance, again, another bite at the apple to do it right. And the same way that it's served the state very well for 170 years with oranges and almonds and other things.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you again, all the panelists for joining today. Thank you for the incredible discussion here. So we're coming up on the hour. We have just 2 more points. Want to turn it over to Hirsh Jain for our local update. So what's going on locally in California. And then finally, we'll hear from Dustin McDonald, who will discuss what's going on at the state and federal level as well. So panelists, thank you again for joining us. You guys go ahead and you're welcome to stay for the rest of it if you'd like. We want to be sensitive to your time. Thanks. All right, Hirsh.
Cool. And Dallin, can you turn on my video? If not, I can just sort of jump into it.
Yeah, you're good. Oops. Yeah, you should be good.
It says, there we go. Cool. Thanks. Hey, everyone, I'll be quick. I know we're kind of running long here. My name is Hirsh, and I'm the head of the LA chapter of the Cannabis Chamber, and just wanted to give a quick local update. It actually dovetails, I think, really well with the conversation that we were just having. You know, in the conversation, Wes at the very end, and then a number of the panelists highlighted the lack of retail outlets in the state and how that's a big challenge. So I'm just going to share with you 5, I think, exciting examples of sort of retail licensing that are happening across the state of California. Many of these are examples that are happening in cannabis deserts. And so I think we can look forward to these examples in 2021. And so those 5 examples are Redwood City, Costa Mesa, Corona, San Diego County, and Los Angeles. These are all 5 places in which there's a real lack of retail outlets, but we should see more in 2021. So the first one is Redwood City. Those of you who are from Northern California may be familiar with San Mateo County, which is sort of between San Francisco and San Jose. It's a big, populous, very wealthy area that currently lacks retail outlets. But Redwood City recently passed an ordinance allowing for 6 dispensaries. Those applications are just due in a couple of days. And I know those licenses are really going to be sought after given how big of a cannabis desert San Mateo County is. So that's one, exciting example of a city that is opening up in the midst of a cannabis desert. And again, I'm just going quickly, just in the interest of time. The second one is Costa Mesa. I think many of you know that Costa Mesa passed a retail ballot ordinance in November. Costa Mesa, like much of the OC, is a big cannabis desert. And I think it'll probably be, many months before we know how many licenses they're going to issue. But at the very least, that will be significant progress in the OC. The third one is Corona. Corona is a town in Riverside County. I think what's exciting about Corona is they're issuing 12 licenses. So to the point that Wes was making earlier, it's frustrating when cities issue a very limited number of licenses. It limits market participants. So it's encouraging to see a city like Corona making some progress. And those applications should be due sometime in April. The fourth example is San Diego County, an issue that I know Dallin's been working really hard on. As many of us know, for years, San Diego County has been a huge cannabis desert in the unincorporated county. There's a few legacy retailers, but they haven't authorized cannabis retail. But sometime in the next few months, the county is going to pass an ordinance that will allow all license types. And I know those will be really sought after. So that's exciting. And then the fifth and final one I'll just mention to you is Los Angeles. I think Los Angeles has struggled over the past few years. There still have been new retail dispensaries that have come online since Prop 64 passed. They've all been the EMMDs. But recently LA identified 200 applicants to move forward in the retail licensing process, and some of those folks are just now, after honestly 18 months of delays, being able to start applying to the state. And so I think the exciting thing there is that's 200 stores when you consider that California only has about 720. If LA can get many of those stores online, that itself will go a long way towards increasing retail access. So I know that was fast, but just wanted to share those 5 exciting examples with you all. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Hirsh. I really appreciate it. And then last but not least, we have a state and federal update from Dustin McDonald. Probably touch on a little bit of a few of the things that we discussed here today. So yeah, Dustin. Oh, you're on mute.
Thanks, Down. Can you hear me now? Fantastic. Thanks, Down, and thanks to everybody on the panel for serving a lot of great content in here. You're absolutely right. Some of what I'm going to talk about today dovetails nicely into what our panel discussed. So we'll start with federal and we'll talk about legislative first. So right now, you've got Congress and the House and the Senate beginning to organize themselves to approach legislation for the 2021-2022 117th Congress legislative session. The primary pieces of legislation that will be moving across chambers are the primary pieces of legislation that passed out of those chambers in 2019 and 2020. We saw in September 2019 that the Safe Banking Act moved out of the House. We expect that bill to move through regular order in the Senate through the committee process. That's really what's held up that bill up to this point. There's broad support for that measure among senators. However, it has to move through regular order, which has not yet. So we expect that process to occur this year and that measure to likely get signed into law at some point later this year, either as a standalone measure or it's included as some kind of COVID or broader economic relief package. So there's that piece of legislation standing out there. The largest piece of legislation that you can expect to hear a lot more about was the legislation that I think State Treasurer Fiona was referring to, that I think Wes also made some reference to as well, and that's the MORE Act. Of course, the MORE Act was legislation that was introduced by Senator Kamala Harris when she was a senator. On the Senate side, that legislation will be carried by Cory Booker this time around on the Senate side. And then on the House side through Jerry Nadler and Earl Blumenauer of New York and Oregon, respectively. That measure imposes a 5% tax, honestly, somewhere between a 5 and 8% tax at retail on cannabis. That would be a federally imposed tax. The proceeds of that revenue would go to the federal government to organize expungement and job training programs. But to the point, tax obviously being a huge issue for folks who are market participants right now who are battling and over dealing with state and local taxes, that issue becomes much more complex and much more difficult once we start layering on federal taxes. Keeping in mind that House Ways and Means Committee, when the MORE Act was originally constructed, wanted to impose a 25% federal tax at retail. So a long way to go. There's a lot of discussion, obviously, about the momentum at the federal level on cannabis, some of which is founded well. There's plenty of momentum. Where the votes are, though, is always the question. And so far, the votes really aren't there on the Senate side for the MORE Act. There's a long way to go there, but that will be the primary vehicle that Majority Leader Senator Schumer, along with Cory Booker and Senator Wyden, tried to build a comprehensive cannabis package out of. On a separate track, you have medical research moving as well. With respect to House side organization, very similar to the Senate side, looking to try to move more as the primary vehicle, but we'll also move safe banking probably pretty quickly, as well as associated medical research, some straight medical research, some that's more veteran specific. There's 2 pieces of legislation there that'll likely move. On the Biden-Harris administration side, no discussion of cannabis within the first 100 days of their plan. However, we do expect them to engage with Congress. There's already discussions going on some medical approaches, as well as approaches to cannabis more from the lens of that this administration is really taking on everything, which is through the lens of social equity and how can we get rid of systemic racism across federal departments and agency policies to include across cannabis. A long way to go there. Getting to the state update really fast, you've got 26 pieces of legislation that were introduced before Friday's deadline, which was the last day that new legislation can be introduced. Among them, a number of spot bills that we'll see the true identity of later. But one that was called out here in this discussion was SB 398, which of course is Senator Skinner's bill that would extend to local government some support in organizing cannabis policy models pertaining to licensing. We continue to hear from local governments that they don't have the resources, internal staffing, or capability to approach organizing that kind of policy. So that bill is a very exciting one for folks on the industry side, on the consumer side, on the patient side, who are all interested in seeing a greater population of licensed retailers across California. The other big thing that's happening this year, obviously, is the consolidation of the 3 state regulatory agencies, the Bureau of Cannabis Control, CDPH, and CDFA. That process is ongoing. The governor introduced a proposal on that on January 10 of this year. We expect to see a reiteration of that, an updated version of that with a little bit more info and more detail when the May budget revise comes out. And between now and then, expect to see a lot of communication with departments and agencies about how that's going to go forward. So that'll be a huge change on the regulatory front, and we're expecting to see the administration look to press go on that sometime in July. And that's all I've got on the Fed and state side down. Thank you.
Okay, great. But yeah, we are a little bit over. So I'll go ahead and we'll just end on that. Thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you for all of our panelists. Thank you Hirsh and Dustin for the update there. Our next Thought Leader series will be on April 7th. So please look out for information for that here soon as we put all that together. Again, thank you all for joining us, and we hope that you have a great rest of your week. Thank you.